Education is a weapon whose effects depend on who holds it in his hand and at whom it is aimed. Hi, I'm John Rose. That was Stalin in an interview with H.G. Wells almost 90 years ago or so. You see, the people behind the curtain know what Plato meant when he said those who tell the stories rule society. They're attacking our youth. That's what's happening right now. It's all about divide and conquer. Remember, the people behind the curtain, these people are Satanists. They don't worship God. Can't blame any religious group, no matter what they are. They may claim to be in a certain group, but they're not. They're non-practicing religious people. They worship Satan. They don't worship God. And they've infiltrated every major sector of human endeavor so they could tell the stories, especially to our young. Education is a weapon. Look what's happening in our school systems now. You get a degree, a college degree nowadays, most corporations, unless you're part of the Fortune 100, don't want to hire you. They know how you've been brainwashed and trained to hate, allegedly in the name of stopping hate. What a joke. This ties right back into the culture wars, the Marxist culture wars. This ties into what Mao was doing with his Red Army. This is a Western version of Mao Zedong's culture wars, where they get the youth to be destabilizers to create disruption. You guys are being used. If you study history, you look at all the communist defectors, we've been warned about what happens in these countries. Very similar to what happens to useful idiots, as Lenin called them. If you're a useful idiot, you're helping promote an agenda and are totally naive of what's happening. But with this new woke agenda, they're teaching our young to be destabilizers. And they're totally unaware of how they're being used and how they can be used as cannon fodder, just like the useful idiots. In Mao's days, he used you for 2 years and then he destroyed you. If you look at what China's all about now, it's nothing like how they got it all started. Folks, it's time to wake up and realize what's going on and how not to get sucked into this divide and conquer strategy where the men and women fight, the old and young fight, the Christians and Muslims fight. It's all a distraction. People behind the curtain want to remain invisible. They're invisible psychopaths. And their MO is to divide and conquer, to keep us distracted. And what's happening right now on this planet, in America especially, is a takeover of our educational systems where they're teaching children nonsense. They're getting them to hate people and call them all sorts of names. And most of these people they're calling names don't think that way. There's only a very small percentage of people that we could say are transphobic or homophobic or anti-whatever, racist, fascist. Nowadays, if you're labeled a denier, that usually means you're telling the truth. You're denying the narrative. Those who tell the stories rule society. Plato, H.L. Mencken. The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. Folks, we're being tricked into these imaginary hobgoblins that are used to scare us and control us. They're feeding into our superstitions. And we humans are so superstitious, it's so sad to see how we are so quick to blame our mistakes and the problems they cause on anything but ourselves, especially if they're invisible. imaginary hobgoblins boogie in. Oh my God. You're this denier, you're anti-this. The chances are, if you're labeled those things, all you are is anti-official version, the official narrative. Again, those who tell the stories rule society. As Goethe once said, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. The truth has been kept from the depth of their minds by masters who rule them with lies. They feed them on falsehoods till wrong looks like right in their eyes. We have to question just about everything, don't we, folks? Yesterday, today's July 22nd, 2023, I'm in Houston and we've had more 100-degree days in the last 30 days than we've had in a while. If you can't tell, I'm sweating out here. But I noticed RFK Jr. was going to speak before our leaders, and he was attacked. He was called names like anti-Semitic, fascist. They lied about him. And why is it? Because just about every politician who's in public office has been put there by the pharmaceutical industries. And what did Robert F. Kennedy Jr. say? If he's elected the very first day in office, he's going to issue an executive order. No more drug commercials on TV. I remember when they started doing this in 1997, as soon as that happened, I go, oh my God, the average person is going to be bombarded by so much bullshit. They're going to be convinced that our current medical system has solutions, and they don't. What we have to stop and think about, folks, is when you look at how many people die around the world, there's about 60 million approximately that are dying around the world. About 45 million, that's 75% of them, are dying, and our experts say cause unknown. Why in the hell are we listening to anybody who admits they don't know the cause? We just got to manage those symptoms. The other 25% of what they refer to as infectious diseases, those other 75% non-infectious, but those so-called infectious diseases, is where our so-called experts are confusing correlation with causation. Just because you find flies around a garbage can, or mosquitoes around stagnant water, or skid marks around car accidents, doesn't mean that's the cause. It's a correlation. It's a consequence. Sure, sometimes correlation equals causation, but it can't be used in court. We know that. God, I want to cut my hair so bad. I stopped cutting my hair by the time this whole garbage started at the end of 2019, sort of in protest, thinking that it would make my life easier, and it turned out it's just the opposite. Leave a comment down below if you think I should cut this mess. I'm so tempted to do it, although I'm kind of getting at a point now where it's not as much to handle. Sorry for the digression there. But leave your comment down below about anything I've been talking about. Shed some light onto this subject. Because our so-called experts are not our experts, whether it's nutrition or medicine. At the end of this video, I'm going to add a clip. I might even start the video off with it. I haven't decided. I've used it before to start off some videos. An interview with Norman Dodd and G. Edgar Griffin. Now, Norman Dodd was the chief investigator of the Reece Committee back in 1954, where we decided to investigate these tax-exempt corporations, the ones that are behind the curtain, funding everything, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Endowment. And what he discovered very quickly, because it was in their minutes, they didn't think anyone would be reading them, but they were very explicit. They tried to control the narrative about World War I and World War II. So they approached all the historians at that time to see if they would change the narrative, and they refused. And that's when they decided they've got to take control and create their own stable of historians, as they said it, and you'll hear that either at the end or the beginning of this short video that's dragging out. And once we realize that history is being controlled, so it will repeat itself, we'll realize they're controlling all of our educational systems. They control what our so-called experts are taught in health, whether it's medicine or nutrition. Then they control our young minds and get them to believe in nonsense and absurdity, so we'll commit atrocities. All in the name of stopping hate. We're going to train you to hate, allegedly in the name of stopping hate. Oh my God. And I was reflecting on this just the other day, thinking how I felt when I first went to college. Thinking, oh boy, aren't I smart? I got to be the smartest ones right now at that time. I had the belief that education was getting better, not worse. Surely my education was better than my parents. Turns out that's a lie. Education's getting worse. And then, again, I was reflecting, how would I have thought if I had been indoctrinated into the world we're living in right now? You young people are at an age right now, it's the worst time in history. Because what's happening in America right now is what happened in China long ago. You guys are being used as disruptors, destabilizers, to create this divide and conquer. And train them to hate in the name of stopping hate. We have to question everything. We have to question our so-called experts. We have to take responsibility for the things we got. And any belief system that takes away our responsibility is something we need to question, and there are a lot of beliefs that do that. I did a video, I'll put a link down below, to one of my videos. I called it Satan's Secret Weapon, but I really should have called it Satan Worshippers' Secret Weapon. And their secret weapon is they know they've implanted all these books of bullshit. They've bombarded our brains with bullshit, literally, so we'll believe in absurdities. And we'll maintain our superstitions. As Will Durant said in his book series, The Story of Civilization, religions are born and may die, but superstition is immortal. Once again, we're real quick to blame our mistakes and the problems they cause on anything but ourselves, especially those imaginary hobgoblins. How do you rule society? It's easy. You create imaginary hobgoblins. You create the fear, offer them the solution, and the solution is the problem. Problem, reaction, solution. The problem is an imaginary hobgoblin, and their solution is the actual problem. Reflect back on what's happened recently. More and more people are waking up to the reality that our governments do not have our best interest at heart. But we have to take that a step further and realize how incompetent we are as a species when it comes to the knowledge of how to live. And then, when it comes to nutrition, there's so much confusion. Who do you believe? Aristotle said, believe only your own experience. There's no fact like a fact learned from your own life. The problem is we're making 5 main mistakes. If you quit making the last 3, and you're a paleo eater or a carnivore diet, you're going to go, look, this problem went away and that problem went away. Well, maybe you're a gluten intolerant. You're having problems with the 3rd mistake. Or maybe you're having problems with that 4th mistake from the Industrial Revolution. You're eating processed foods. We got to correct all 5 mistakes. And there's 3 ways to do that. 2 of them, not enough people are willing to do to get everyone's attention. There's only one way to correct these 5 main mistakes on a temporary basis so we can see what we're missing. And then enough of us will do it to get everyone's attention. And we have to do that because if we don't reach the tipping point, we're just going to be fighting shadows in Plato's cave, and it's going to be difficult for the average person to embrace this. You play a role on whether we stay where we are or we wake up from this nightmare. Most of us are not in a position to see what we're missing, or we're not in a position to think what we have to do is a fair trade, because we're not in a position to do so. We have to see what we're missing. We have to test an idea as time has come. As Victor Hugo said, there's one thing stronger than all the armies in the world. It's an idea as time has come. That's why I always say test an idea as time has come. How can you defeat all the armies in the world? We got to change our mentality. Number one problem we humans have, it's us. We are the enemy. We're sick and disconnected. We've got a dark side to our behavior that creates the wrong mentality. It's all because we have the wrong belief system. We're superstitious. And how do you make sense out of this? Test an idea as time has come, and I guarantee you, when you do it, you're in for a treat.
The story you are about to hear represents a missing piece in the puzzle of modern history. Without this knowledge, many contemporary events are simply beyond understanding. You are about to hear a man tell you that the major tax-exempt foundations of this land, since at least 1945, have been operating to promote a hidden agenda. And that agenda has nothing to do with the surface appearance of charity, good works, or philanthropy. This man will tell you that the real objectives include the creation of a worldwide collectivist state, including the Soviet Union, which is to be ruled from behind the scenes by those same interests which now control the tax-exempt foundations. The man who tells this story is none other than Mr. Norman Dodd, who in 1954 was the staff director of the Congressional Special Committee to investigate tax-exempt foundations, sometimes referred to as the Reese Committee, in recognition of its chairman, Congressman Carroll Reese. The interview you are about to see was conducted by me in 1982.
At that time, their interest shifts over to preventing what they call a reversion of life in the United States to what it was prior to 1914, when World War I broke out. And they arrive at that point, they come to the conclusion that to prevent a reversion, we must control education in the United States. And they realize that that's a pretty big task. So to them, it is too big for them alone, so they approach the Rockefeller Foundation with the suggestion that that portion of education which could be considered domestic be handled by the Rockefeller Foundation, and that portion which is international should be handled by the endowment. And they then decide that the key to the success of these two operations lay in an alteration of the teaching of American history. So they approach 4 of the then most prominent teachers of American history in the country, people like Charles and Mary Bird, and their suggestion to them is, will they alter the manner in which they present this subject, and they get turned down flat. So they then decide that it is necessary for them to do, as they say, build our own stable of historians. And then they approach the Guggenheim Foundation, which specializes in fellowships, and say, when we find young men in the process of studying for doctorates in the field of American history, and we feel that they are the right caliber, will you grant them fellowships on our say-so? And the answer is yes. So under that condition, eventually they assemble 20. And they take this 20 potential teachers of American history to London, and there they're briefed into what is expected of them when, as and if they secure appointments in keeping with the doctorates they will have earned. And that group of 20 historians ultimately becomes the nucleus of the American Historical Association.